We have a video of you on Zoom. All right, let's go to the composition of the Senate. As we mentioned, there are four sets of siblings. We got the Villars, the Tulfos, Cayetanos, and the Ejercitos. What do you think are the implications of this concentration of power, and how will that influence the dynamic in the Senate?
This is definitely not a positive development for Philippine democracy as well as for our representative politics, because in a big nation like ours and only a few families are and ended up having Senate seats, that means that, as you mentioned, there's a concentration of power. But aside from power, what the senators should also be, or what should we also be worried about this this too many siblings in the Senate, is that ideally, of course, they would be able to represent a variety of interests, right? That could be sectoral interests, like, education issues, health issues, or even regional interests. And in a Senate with 24 members, you would want to maximize the diversity of the members so that issues are also be can also be diverse. So now we can expect that diversity will be narrowed down a little bit, given that a lot of them come from the same family.
But I guess the main concern here is how they will be voting when it comes to legislation and when it comes to important issues like the upcoming impeachment trial. Do you think that they would vote in bunches?
Oh, that's something that I don't expect them to do. I think what traditional political families would usually do in this case is to split their vote, right? Just to make sure that if national public opinion changes, then either family can, has an advantage, right? So maybe one of the siblings will vote to acquit or convict, but we'll never know how the trial would really go. But there's there's this tradition, if not current practice among political dynasties, among political families, that they sometimes do not necessarily align politically, especially on controversial issues such as, for example, the impeachment trial.
Pagdating sa mga pamilya, no, what does this tell us about the voting preference of Filipinos? Is there a limit to putting family members in politics? Like for example, with the Tulfos, dalawa yung nahalal, pero si Ben nalaglag. Meron bang gano'n na parang may research ba kayo that tells us there's a limit to this and why we actually vote for members of the same family in politics?
Right. Well, there are structural reasons, but also reasons specific to our voters. So, we actually run a survey in March 2024, and what we found is that for many Filipinos, it's quite acceptable that dynasties are elected into power. So, majority of our Filipino voters do not think that it's a problem that we elect dynasties into power, and I think this is one of the biggest arguments being made by dynastic politicians themselves. But the other interesting point or data in this particular survey is that we've also learned that Filipino voters do change their opinion depending on what types of political dynasties there are. So as you know, as for example in the Senate, you have two family members serving at the same time, but the other type of dynasties, there are other types wherein they succeed each other in one position. So for example, mayor position or governor position succeeding each other, or they could be serving at the same time as well, but in different positions. So someone is a mayor, and then a relative is a congressman or a vice mayor, and then these different kinds of dynamics. And it appears that for Filipinos, the least acceptable type of dynasties is is a dynasty that serves together in the Senate. And that might explain what happened to Ben Tulfo. It probably was a last minute decision on the part of our voters, that they realized that they don't have to send two Tulfos to the Senate, and that would give us three members coming from the same family. So this has nothing to do with their leadership competence or assessing their capacity as senators, but rather the acceptability for Filipino voters has just something to do with the idea that it's just too much in a 24 member legislative body to have three, for example, or more than two coming at the same time.
Maybe because it's a lot more competitive in the Senate, given there are only 24 seats up for grabs as compared to, let's say, the local government, where it is being framed as family members helping out each other, making it easier to govern, right? But I wanna get your insight on this. I mean, do the latest results say that political dynasties are more acceptable than celebrities running for office?
Right. I think this is something to do more with the structural reasons of why dynasties perpetuate, right? So, for example, in a Senate race, it's always going to be, it's always going to be a question of national level awareness, and dynasties do have an advantage uh, because they're known nationally in terms of their political family names, right? You could argue the same for celebrities, right? But I guess that the changing media landscape may actually be changing also how advantageous is a celebrity background for a candidate is, right? I mean, traditionally, a decade ago, you celebrities with TV background would have a definite advantage coming into a particular particular race, even in the Senate, right? But I don't think you can say the same now, wherein media landscape it's much more fragmented, right? Of course, a sizable number of Filipinos are still on television, but you also have other competing sources of media use now. So you have digital, for example, and then
Mm.
social media is playing a big role. So I don't think that it's a similar landscape in the past. So now celebrities cannot assume that they have that automatic advantage when they run for a Senate seat compared to in the past. That's what I'm seeing here.
We have a more leveled playing field as celebrities lose their edge to digital, to the personalities who have gone viral on social media, I guess. Uh, I, I wanted to take a look at the statement of Sara Duterte. She said that she wants a bloodbath for the upcoming impeachment trial. Is this her declaring her confidence over the result, given the composition of the Senate? How do you read into that?
Yeah, definitely between the past Senate and the incoming one, the new one. I definitely think that this renewed optimism and this renewed optimism on the part of the vice president is fueled by the fact that more allies of the vice president are coming into the Senate. So I think that definitely if you compare the two senates, there's a more opportunity and a clearer pathway for her acquittal with the entry of new allies. And I think it's just coming from that. Not to mention that his allies, her allies, not only got into the Senate and won the elections, but they won with a sizable number of support, right? So that could also explain the optimism and the this latest statement of Inday Sara.
Okay, what is your forecast over the factions and alignments in the Senate?
This is what we're watching out for right now. I think that the Duterte bloc, if we may call it them that way, right? I think that they will play a big role in choosing who the Senate president will be and how the Senate leadership will look like. So because just of the numbers that they have, right? And although, for example, you have returning senators Bam Aquino and Kiko Pangilinan also coming into the Senate, and will also play a big role in choosing the Senate leadership. I would expect that they will probably choose to be in the minority with Senator Risa Ontiveros, just because of their advocacies and their political positions on, for example, just the very big issue of Marcos Duterte in fighting, right? So they probably wouldn't. Because of that, because of these senators choosing to be in the minority or could be expected to be in the minority, then the Dutertes, I think, will play a big role in choosing who the Senate leadership will be.
How many are you expecting under that Duterte block? What is the number?
Yeah. So around 8 to 9 on my last count, you have more reliable members of the Duterte bloc, of course, Senator Robin Padilla, for example, and re-election is Senator Bongo, Senator De La Rosa. Then the then of course the new senator, Congressman Rodante Marcoleta. But you also an open question, but likely to be siding with the Dutertes would be the Nationalista Bloc. So you have Camille Villar, for example, coming into the Senate. I think Pia Cayetano is also with the Nationalista. Um,
Mm.
it's the last time, right, that she ran. So that would also that would definitely also play a role, right? How these nationalistas, we have an understanding that, Camille, for example, was endorsed by the vice president, so she's likely going to side with them at least for the Senate leadership issue.
You got Amy Marcos as well, right?
Yes.
Siding with Sara Duterte. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's about 7 that I'm counting there. This is where it comes in, I guess, no? If Pia Cayetano is with Nacionalista, where is his brother, Alan Peter? Do you expect him to go this way? Or, gaya na sabi mo kanina, you expect them to balance it out?
Yeah. So, well, Alan, I think the last time I checked, has declared himself independent in terms of party affiliations, or at least the last time he ran. But with he made latest pronouncements, right, regarding the arrest of the former president, the ICC arrest of former President Rodrigo Duterte. So you would also assume that at this time, he has more affinity with the Dutertes on these particular issues, and I think so. It's likely, right, that he may also go for them for the Senate leadership.
I believe they need a number of 9 to be able to have an acquittal for VP Sara. How about Tito Soto and Ping Lacson? I mean, they are medyo mas centrist yung dating nila, no? But where do you expect them, or what could convince them to vote one way or another?
Mhm. So yeah, so we expect them to be, of course, likely to be more pro conviction given that they're part of the admin allies. But I don't think that's a settled issue. They're likely to be more a swing vote, I think. Sense that, well, for one, Tito Soto has the Nationalist People's Coalition, the NPC. So he has his own block in the Senate. So Senator Legarda, for example, is also NPC. Um, but so I think that these swing senators are those senators that will rely mostly on how public opinion will develop as a result of the once the trial starts, in the sense that especially for Tito Sen and Ping Lacson, all of our senators are considered presidents and vice presidents in waiting, and therefore they're sensitive to national public opinion. If they have 2028 ambitions, if their re-election is in 2028, for example, these electoral incentives will definitely play a role in how they will conduct themselves in the trial.
Well, both have spent a long time already in public service. It seems to me that they could be also focused on cementing their political legacies. Could that also play a huge role in this?
Yes, and in by tradition as well, veteran senators, those who are more senior in the Senate, tend to be more statesman-like, right? Or at least they idealize themselves more statesman in the sense that they do want to come out as independent and as someone who has really weighed the evidence. And actually, in our last week of April survey, 50% of Filipinos do want the senator judges to base their decision on the evidence. So if we're seeing, if they will be basing their votes on public opinion, and I think there's an incentive as well to play the statesman-like role, right? Given that most Filipinos expect them to also use the evidence in the trial as the basis of how they will vote.
Okay, because I only have time for one more question, I wanted to ask you, how do you think the 3 years, the final 3 years of President Bongbong Marcos will look like? Will this be influenced heavily by the purview of 2028, the presidential elections? I mean, to get legislation done, what would be crucial for the president to be able to, I guess, have a good run for its final 3 years?
So yeah, definitely I think 2028 will play a big role. It will be hanging above the heads of everyone in Malacanang and in Congress. As much as I don't want that, right? I, as a citizen, I do want them to focus on their duties first, but that's how the electoral incentives will work. In terms of the legislative agenda, I think the first order of business is to win the Senate leadership issue. If this goes, if the Senate leadership contest, for example, is decided on the favor of Marcos opposition, not his allies, then you know what the 3 years will look like, right? It will be hard for them to make the Senate work with the president's legislative agenda. The good thing is that the House appears to be safer. There are rumors that there might be changes in the House leadership, but the numbers, if you just look at the numbers, you would still expect that the president will have a strong influence in the legislative conduct of the House. It's the Senate who's going to be more challenging than usual.
More the bigger battlefield. But as you mentioned, no, tama ka, no, si Pulong pinapatakbo ni Sara Duterte as House Speaker. It seems there is a challenge over in the House, but as you mentioned, dito tayo tutuon ng maglalagay ng pansin sa Senado. Okay, maraming salamat sa iyo for your insights today and for the wonderful discussion on the aftermath of the 2025 midterm elections. We have Cleve Arguelles, President and CEO of WR Numero Research.
Thank you, Gretchen. Good morning.